Hey, good day, everybody out there in Facebook land. I am Paul Sterling. I am the author of Argue Less, Love More, best-selling book on relationships. I'm a relationship and intimacy coach, and I love interviewing people who bring something special to the world of relationships and couples that are out there doing it. So they're coming in from Malaysia. It's Natasha and Jachym, is that?
Jachym, quite, almost.
I'm getting closer and closer. And
Yes.
this is going to be an interactive call. So we're going to be diving into what does it take to make your relationship remarkable. And I'm going to be asking them some tough questions. So, and what we want to do is hear your comments. So I'm going to be checking the comments thing. So where in the world are you coming in from, different people? And if you've got questions for me or for them, please let me know and we will get them. There we go. See a little more of you. So how did the two of you end up being relationship experts? I'm going to set it up a little bit differently. Give us your path, but I'm going to set it up this way. I once heard that almost every master started out as a disaster. You know, so we want to hear a tiny bit of your disaster story because it's kind of like it's. I guess the reason I'm asking that is because it would be like I wouldn't want advice from somebody who was born into a rich family and said, you know, money is easy. I was given all the money by my parents, and that's all you have to do is get rich parents. It's like, I want to know people who've been through relationship hell and then come out the other side. What are their tips, their tools, their secrets? So tell us a little bit about your journey.
It started off pretty shiny. I'll put it that way. It started off real good, as in we met by chance. It was almost like in a movie because I'm Canadian, Jachym is Swiss. So we met by chance. We were both flying to different places, coming from different destinations. So when I sat down next to him at the London Heathrow Airport, we thought nothing of it. But that was actually the beginning. I just sat down next to this stranger. We weren't looking for love, you know, at that time. It was like this little time of crisis where all the flights were canceled and there was just like a tiny bit of snow on the ground. I couldn't even see it. As a Canadian, I'm like, where's the snow? Why is this airport not working? But pretty much we met then. We were stuck together for 3 days in London, couldn't leave the island, and we kept in touch. So actually, the journey has been quite, it started there, but we had to do the long distance for a bit more than 2 years. That was quite tough with all the time zones. And then eventually I moved to Switzerland, and long distance was tough. And when we moved in and finally were together in Switzerland, we thought, aha, now we've made it. You know, we thought the long distance relationship was the toughie. We thought we made it, you know. And so speaking of that little mountain or that hump, we thought that was the hump. So once we moved in together, we were quite excited. We were finally together. We didn't have to be apart anymore. And so I would say the honeymoon phase was actually quite long because every time we visited and saw each other in this long distance relationship, it was like, oh, we're on vacation again. We're on vacation again. We're somewhere in the world to meet again. It was good.
So let me dive in. I'm going to interrupt periodically just to bring things, but just so that people get an idea there, what you're saying is you're touching into the fantasy. There's two different ways of looking at relationships. One is Walt Disney, called Happily Ever After. When you finally get together, that the journey's over, all the hard work has been done. The other way of looking at relationships is, I call it the Lord of the Rings. So Disney versus the Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings, when you get together and the journey starts, and that's where all the hard work comes in. So I'm guessing you had the fantasy of Happily Ever After and ended up with Lord of the Rings. So I'm just setting up a little framework there.
Yes.
Yes, that's pretty accurate. The Lord of the Rings.
So keep going. I just interrupt to add little key points here and there. But
yeah. So we were still pretty happy at that one point, but soon after moving in together, we realized how different we were as people. So, living together and those differences, it started to show. And first, it kind of showed in the household, like our lifestyles, our preferences, those kind of things. But over time, we noticed that it kind of accumulated. Like it seemed like little stuff, but it just kind of built up. And also around this time, we've been change workers for many years now. And so we were doing lots of self-development ourselves too. And we kind of just latched onto this idea of experimenting with what love actually means. We were asking ourselves, okay, is love unconditional? If I truly love someone, do they have to belong only with me? And so we were testing these ideas and almost like pushing ourselves and this envelope and trying to be rebels in a way and trying to see, what does love mean and how can we explore that within this relationship? But that actually took us into, it's like if we're looking at Lord of the Rings, where this is no longer Disney, this is like Little Red Riding Hood accidentally getting into the woods. Like we were just following that in off the path. We got into the really dark areas of the forest and the bushes, and we honestly lost our way, because in our mind we were trying to be all spiritually correct, and we were trying to love in this way where, oh, it's just my insecurities, oh no, this jealousy, it's nothing, I just got to work through it. But the whole process, at least for me, I was really denying my true emotions, my boundaries getting crossed, and all of these things, even though we had great communication and honesty the whole time. We talked about everything, we didn't hide anything from each other. It was all consensual.
So let me I'm going to keep going back and forth. And I also want to keep pulling in is the people out on the Facebook world and on YouTube, wherever they're watching from today. What is your definition of love? If you could type that in, because Natasha, that's what you're digging into right there. And then the other thing, I think that the biggest challenge about telling the truth, because it sounds like you're going there, is telling the truth to ourselves. Like actually, oh, I'm not jealous, or jealousy, I should get over it. It's like telling ourselves, oh my God, I'm terrified, or whatever it is, because jealousy is working with couples for 25 years. It's a deep-seated issue, and I've had to wrestle with it myself, and I can pretend that I'm not. I can, the hardest person to tell the truth to is ourselves at times. So dive back in again. I'm going to hopefully it'd be okay. I keep interrupting both of you.
Oh, that's totally okay. Yeah, but that's exactly it. Like you can have all the communication you want. You can be as honest to your partner as you want. If you're not honest to yourself, what are you going to do? You're just going to communicate with hot air. There's nothing behind it, you see? And so that is exactly what happened to us, is that we were all honest. We had all the right guidelines in place. We had the communication in place, but we weren't honest in ourselves. And so that is where, we were experiencing hurt, and it became more and more difficult in the relationship because of that dishonesty. And that was, like, we can talk about it now, but then of course you're dishonest to yourself, so you don't know. So always looking back, everything's clear, but when you're in it, it's not clear. And so a lot of patterns started coming up in our relationship. There was passive aggressiveness coming in, there was bickering coming in, nagging coming in. From Natasha's side, there was a lot of kind of controlling behavior in the household where, I'd be told off about how I washed the carrot or something like that, which led me to kind of like start to ask her the whole time about, am I doing this right? Because I didn't want to get blasted again with, some kind of outburst from her, kind of sidestep. And so that really, it started kind of spiraling out of control, the whole relationship.
This is awesome. Thank you for being this way and honest. And it's like so normal for people when they get together, especially from different countries, different cultures. You think that there's a norm, and you think that the other person should do it that way. And if they're not doing it, if they're not washing the carrot the right way, they're deliberately doing something wrong. Yeah. So I'm going to show you, you guys haven't seen this, but I'm going to show a little map and then dive back in and get more from you. But it's, I was in New York City with my beloved, and in New York City, there's 840 miles of track, 472 stations, and 27 subway lines in the subway. And it's overwhelming. And the only way we could find our way around is with a map. So I came up with a map for relationships. And as we talk with you, I want to hear how you can relate to the map and how because you work with couples now around the world, turning their relationships around. And we want to hear about that as we move through this. But it's like, when I narrowed it down, there was three things. There was the heart set, the skill set, the mindset, and you started talking about the patterns. And we have something called the relationship operating system, made up of our habits, patterns, and beliefs. And I'm listening to you guys, and it's like, bing, bing, I can see it. The other one is, having skills to clear up the past, connect and get present, create possibilities for the future. And the last part is friend, partner, lover. That's the heart set, where you get your needs met in all those three areas. So I just wanted to kind of lay the map out, and we can come back and forth to it as we're hearing about your incredible journey here.
Right. Awesome. Actually, so what you just shared is amazing, the diagram. And I'll divert a little bit in the story, because I saw one thing about the past, and that is really vital in our whole story. So I lost my dad when I was 6 years old. He committed suicide. Mm-hmm. And so that taught me, I didn't know that back then, but it taught me, the association I made is love is dangerous. Okay, if I'm going to let someone in, they're going to hurt me. And this played out in our relationship. Okay, so I was wanting her close, but not too close, because if she's too close, I'm going to get hurt, right? And so there's this push and pull dynamic happening in the relationship. The open relationship where we're exploring what love means and all of that was perfect for it, because you don't have to face that. You don't have to face the fear. I didn't have to face the fear. And it was only once I actually really integrated the death of my father, I connected back to my emotions, that I was more capable of showing up in the relationship and loving in the relationship and being present, rather than have this dysfunctional dance of push and pull happening. So I just wanted to add that, because it was perfect for the diagram that you showed.
Yeah, for the diagram, because if we don't clear up the past, it's in the present. And another thing which I didn't talk about is three keys: is availability, capability, and willingness. That's sort of the inner circle. How available we are depends on how much of the past we've healed. And love makes us vulnerable. People think it makes us invincible. And in some ways it can, but it also makes us extremely vulnerable. So how did you go from the bumps And did it get to the point where you were ready to break up? Were you ready to call it quits?
Yeah. So I guess Yahim shared his part of the past. And then I think my past also played a role. Like now it's as if we're bringing these puzzle pieces in that don't quite fit because it's from the past. It's not in the present, but we just keep trying to jam it together. For me, how the past kind of played a role is that I grew up in a household where I think my parents did try to really love me in the capacity that they could, but a lot of my childhood was spent in fear because there was so much emotional, I guess, turmoil or rage or blame that I constantly was like, okay, I need to make this adult happier. I need to make this adult emotionally more stable so that I can feel safe. So I kind of often played this role of a little mediator or a little bunny that was hopping around and being all happy so that I would be like, okay, I think I'm all right now because people around me are okay and they're not going to yell at me. So when it came to this relationship, and I didn't have a very good like role models of what healthy love is like everything I did, the nagging and picking on Yachim, I saw that actually. So I somehow took it on too. But when it came to our relationship and then marrying Yachim, somehow at the back of my mind, I thought I needed to be a good wife for this to work. Like I needed to do my part in this. There's nothing wrong with that. But then I thought that to be a good wife, I need to make him happy. It was almost like my job, my role as a wife to make my husband happy. That's how happy marriages last. So I had that in my head. So when we kind of went down this whole exploration and this path, and we had all this communication, and I thought I was being honest, and I kept saying yes, even though it didn't feel right. And then when it started to hurt more and more, when I got those signals that this is getting really difficult, like this is bringing us apart, it's not giving us any happiness, it was like this huge mountain we were climbing, both personally due to all the insecurities and all the triggers that are coming up emotionally, and also between us. It was getting so hard. Yet I thought, well, I said to my husband yes so many times, and I know that freedom's important to him, and I know that I should make him happy. So who am I to reel it all in and be like, oh, never mind. Like, sorry, like I didn't mean that. Actually, no, I want to say no now.
Yeah, and that's that. I want to stop for just a second to be with that, because I think that there's so many, especially women, that have been taught to say yes when they mean no. But it's also the way we treat kids. You know, kids, it's not okay for them to have a no. And then all of a sudden they're supposed to have a no to drugs, no to sex, but if they don't want it, no to all. We're supposed to have this no built into them, but yet they're conditioned by the family that they need to say yes, clean your room, do this, do whatever you don't want to do. So how did you kind of deal with that paradox inside where there was a no inside and you were saying yes?
Well, that doesn't make a very happy human being. Let me put it that way. When you're dishonest to yourself and you can't express that truth, it really hurts. It really, really hurts because those around you start to hurt you and you just keep letting them. You keep letting them and you keep on getting your boundaries crossed and you keep not speaking up. And there was a great deal of fear that I built up because at that point, even though it felt like we didn't have anything good anymore, there was still love. But what we brought out in each other in terms of the behaviors and the things we were saying and doing, it wasn't healthy. It wasn't nice anymore. But still, I was afraid of losing Yachim. And deep down, maybe this is from the past, I was so afraid to actually tell him what was really going on. because I was really scared that if I told him that I was truly hurt, I was truly unhappy, that I couldn't take it anymore. I thought that, well, there goes that happy wife image, like that thing I was trying to keep up. And now he has to deal with someone who's unhappy, who wants him to change, who's going to say no. Like how, like he's going to just reject me and run away and say, no, thanks. That's not what we've created so far, you know? So I was really afraid that he was just going to pretty much deny this whole thing and be like, no, that's not what I want. So I really held it in for as long as I could. But then at some point, we tried to make it work. So we tried to deal with this conflict. And every time it wouldn't really go anywhere. Like we would walk away, mostly me in tears, and be like, okay, we're talking about the same things. We would say the same things. And this is not ending. This issue is not resolving. Until one day, it wasn't a conscious decision, but I just cracked. I was so hurt. I couldn't see a future. I couldn't see any hope. I couldn't see where things could go. It was just off track. It was like the forest at this point was just like black with bats. I didn't, and there was nowhere to go. There was nowhere to go, and that was really scary because I'm like, I don't know if I want to keep going forward with you in this. This is I can't do this anymore. And so I cracked open.
Wait 1 second. Hold that thought. I just want people, if you can relate, if any place in your life you've been where Natasha is, and I have been. I'm not the happy wife. I was the husband, and I've been engaged 4 different times, you know, and there have been times where I kept sucking it up. And sucking it up and like, no, I'm going to pretend it's okay. And it's like, it's terrifying because we're afraid it's either I'm going to lose my relationship with myself or I'm going to lose my relationship with my partner. And I didn't want to lose either. So what was, you know, and if you can relate to that, just, you know, some comment in the comments. And I know I'm not seeing all the comments right now because I'm only seeing a few of them, but if any comments, we'll go back and we'll check in with you and we'll read them all. So thank you for participating. Makes us feel like we're not just talking to the computer screen. Okay, so what was your turning point and what can you recommend to people?
Yeah. So from a great deal of fear, there can be hope within a second. That's what I experienced within this moment, really. Is that things can shift quite dramatically if you allow yourself to go to places that you haven't been. So for me in this relationship, I didn't let myself be seen, how I felt, what I was going through. I didn't let that inform the direction of our relationship. I just held it all in. I thought it was all pain and it was all fear, it was all this and that. But really, no, it was crucial information that I was collecting from my body, from my whole experience that could have led us to a much healthier place and did, you know. But in that moment, when I was so scared, Jachym, I actually saw that he recognized my emotions, my feelings. He recognized that there was a human being in the room who wanted help, who needed help, who was reaching out to him for help. And it was no longer us fighting with each other with this issue. Finally, it like that moment of empathy and compassion and understanding, it just brought us back as a team again. Where before it felt like, okay, there's love, but it's just not enough. This moment where he really saw me, where I became vulnerable and I showed him my true self and my true experience, that brought us back together to be able to actually move forward in a better direction.
So can you give us what it looked like? Because it sounds really nice and clean and easy. And part of the way I describe it is we all have patterns. And it's like either me and my pattern against my partner, or it's me and my partner against our patterns to have a breakthrough. And it sounds like for a while was you and your pattern against your partner, and then your partner and you changed and it's against the pattern. So what did the breakthrough look like? And how did it look for you? Because
Right.
she's going through this, and
She's going through this, yeah. We were probably lying in bed or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but I just remember that in this moment where she was so honest to me, and she's like, look, I just can't go on like this. I mean, that's literally what she said. For me, it just clicked, and I was like, I could see her, what she was going through, the difficulties, the struggles, the pain, and it was just clear to me in this moment. Like, I was like, we got to do something about this. It just changed everything for me. And I can't explain why, but that moment where she was so clear and honest to me. I mean, we have had this struggle. I saw the struggle. We both saw the struggle before, but it was different this time. This time, I don't know. I recognized it with my heart. I really felt it, and I saw it. And so that night, we decided we're going to make it work. We're going to find our way as a team. And that was literally the point of transformation. Of course, you have the point of transformation, then there's a lot of work afterwards, but it was the point where it shifts and where the relationship was turned around to a large degree. Yeah.
I'm setting you guys up for, you can say which ones made the biggest difference, and you could say none of the above, but I like, having worked with people for a while, the skills that I come up with, that there's 7 of them. Communication, and it sounds like that was good. The one that sounds like shifted is about getting your needs met. Like even having needs. Like I grew up where women were not supposed to have needs, and neither were men. I was an Alaskan commercial fisherman. We don't have needs. We're tough. I also had a hard time with conflicts, healing wounds, and Jachym, you said about your father committing suicide when you were 6. So we either get bitter or we get better with our wounds. And then trust. And the key thing that I'm hearing you say, Natasha, in this is there's 2 types of trust. There's trusting the other person. Will they keep their word? Will they respect the boundaries? Will they do all the rest of that? The more important kind of trust that most people don't talk about is, do I trust myself in a relationship with you? Will I keep my word to me? Will I keep my boundaries? Will I be able to say what's okay and what's not okay? Or will I give it up? And I've done that in relationships. Where I just like the other person was so important to me, I gave up everything, my own word to myself. Intimacy and dealing with differences. So I don't know which of these or any of them was the most helpful for the 2 of you in creating the breakthroughs that you did.
So for me, when I look at that, it's intimacy. The way you put it, embarrassing vulnerability is bad, and the other side brings you closer. Vulnerability is essential. That moment was exactly that. That is, in a nutshell, exactly what happened. Is that vulnerability, that openness from Natasha, is what brought us closer.
And I've seen that with clients. It's like one of my trainers, a guy named Marshall Rosenberg, who created nonviolent communication, and he talks about unexpressed fear comes out as anger. And a lot of times, if we're not expressing our fear, or we may have body image, we may have all these different self-doubts, and if we don't tell our partner, they'll think that they're angry at us, or that we're no longer attractive, or whatever it is. There's all these other things, but when they get vulnerable, it was transformational. So how do you teach other people to do that? And where did it go from there? It sounds like you had part of your relationship was open. Did it then become monogamous?
Yes. Yeah, that we had to make those decisions. We had to take a look at everything, really. But at that point, I think it was still not enough. love. Love is, I believe, to have a healthy, lasting relationship, just having love is not enough. And I'm really glad you're bringing up all these skills, because we hurt one another even though we loved each other. It doesn't make sense, but that was that equation we were in back then. And at that point, we knew we wanted to change. So the commitment was there. Our focus was there. We kind of bonded together as a team again. So we were looking at least in the same direction. But still, we didn't know enough ourselves to solve it. So we actually had to reach out for help, professional help, work with different people. But ultimately, it was in this 7-day kind of retreat. We were on our own, like we did our own 7-day retreat with the same practitioner. We would meet sometimes together to kind of talk about our issues, but mostly it was our journey alone. And on that last day, we actually sat down to talk about what we have learned and what we have realized so far, which meant
you said something really important here, and there are actually a lot. I love you guys. You're good. There's this story that we have to do it alone, and it's really, it's in so many cultures. But if you look at it, I'll give an odd example. Tiger Woods. Almost everybody in the world knows who Tiger Woods is. One of the best golfers in the world. Did Tiger do it alone? No. Tiger did a lot of work. I'm not taking anything away from him. And part of him was smart enough to know to not do it alone, to have, he's probably got, I think, 6 or 7 coaches, a putting coach, a driving coach. And yet relationships we're supposed to do on our own. And the turning point I can look at, I've had so many different coaches and mentors, and it's been probably the only reason I survived is because I gave myself the chance of having a coach on my side. It's like, so Natasha, I'm going to ask you a question that's got one of those obvious answers. Have you ever looked in a mirror?
Yes, I brushed my teeth this morning, so I saw myself.
Right. But it's like we need a mirror to see our reflection. And a lot of times in a relationship without a mentor, like without you two mentoring somebody, they can't see themselves. I couldn't see my own behavior without a mirror, without a reflection. And that's what a coach, a therapist, a counselor, someone who's good. And you got to be careful. I know I say this with some trepidation, but some people just stir up shit and make relationships worse. You want to find a good coach. You want to find someone who knows what they're doing. So how did you get into the world of like turning your own relationship around to codifying it and going, oh, here's how we can help other people do this?
Right. So, I mean, looking at our own journey, looking at all the different bits and pieces that we have gone through, and especially, that cleanse, it's not a nice thing to do, to be honest. You look all at the dark stuff, all destructive behavior you've done, all the disempowerment you've brought to yourself and your partner. So it can be quite painful. And it was, sorry, go ahead.
So we were in the middle of the bushes, right? We were in the middle of forest, and I said it's all pitch black with bats around, and we didn't know where to go. So finally we held hands and we're like, we can do this. We can get out of here. But where do we go? Where's the wizard who can come down and help us, because we can't see anymore? Imagine if you put a mirror in front of ourselves at that moment. It is not an ugly picture.
It's not a pretty picture.
Not a pretty picture. Not a pretty picture. We have been going down off into the bushes, off the path for years at this point. So now you look at yourself in the mirror. Whoa, not nice.
Yeah. So, that cleanse for us really kind of highlighted all different patterns that we were playing, especially for ourselves, because the majority is just looking at yourself in that cleanse. And it was at the end of this cleanse that she asked, do you guys want to stay together? So, you've just looked at all that stuff and there you are. And she's like, well, so what you going to do? You want to stay together? And we said, yes. And it was like, yeah, we do. We have seen all that stuff and we know we can do better. And so it was from there that then we start implementing, you go into that, that's great. But then it's now implementation. What does that mean in everyday life? You leave the cleanse. How do you live your life? How are you taking care of those patterns? How are you, what is this relationship actually about? So those are all the learnings that we have taken on and then put together. And that's from where we're coming, is from this kind of experience, from this understanding, and from the understanding of the psychology, the personal psychology everyone has, that we're helping people with.
Wow. Because I'm going back to, just for a second, I call it the ROS, the relationship operating system, your habits, patterns, and beliefs. And it sounds like the 7 days in the woods took you in there to look. And for a lot of people, it's the big question is our system set up to sabotage or support us?
Right.
And part of the reason I was excited about interviewing the two of you is to figure out what are the habits, patterns, and beliefs you now have to support you. Because it's like, if you look at growing up, we make up a lot of our beliefs by the time we're 5 years old, 7 years old. And I know my programming wasn't good for my family. Like, my dad was Irish Catholic, recovering Catholic, alcoholic, somewhat angry atheist, and brilliant and creative and charismatic. So it wasn't one-sided. He was, you wanted to get his attention, and he gave us a lot of great skills, and he sucked at compassionate communication. And so when I, won marriage for broken engagement, I learned I had to break that pattern. So you said, yes, we're going to do this. We're going to make it work. What are some of the key things? Because you talk about healing the hurts, because it sounds like, Natasha, there was a bunch of hurt in this. Even though you had said yes, it broke your heart, it sounds like. How did you heal that? How did you turn that around?
Yeah. I think this goes to anyone who has been hurt before. Whether, your partner has broken trust within the relationship, or you're feeling uncertain yourself. I was kind of in that zone. It was a very vulnerable place to be, because that mirror, it showed us all the ways in which we hurt ourselves and we hurt each other. And then to come from that very, very raw, honest place and then make a decision whether you want to stay together or not, it's kind of crazy. Like, are you sure you want to make a decision at that point? But we did, because within that vulnerability and in taking responsibility for our own actions, like the harm we've done towards ourselves and towards each other, I realized at that point that a lot of the hurt that allowed Jachym to, I guess, commit towards me was really like, I was hurting myself every time I didn't speak up for myself. So I consensually let this man hurt me again and again, really. So to come to that realization, and then to apologize to each other and to ourselves, really, to ask for forgiveness. It was not the usual apology, the sorry that you hear on the street, like when you bump into a stranger or you're at the mall or something. No, it's not. It's a real apology where you're asking for forgiveness because you recognize what you've done, what you've actually done. And you take responsibility for what that means. And so when we made that decision to be together, it was as if we were different people. And Jachym says this very, very often for relationships and in life. You're either aligned to fears or you're aligned to love. And when I didn't speak up for myself and set those boundaries and things like that, it was coming from a place of complete fear. I was afraid to lose him. I was afraid of his reaction. I was afraid of all these things. But we knew that, okay, if that is the power we have of destruction, surely we can put this in a different basket, and we have the power to make it good too. Because if we can hurt each other that much, surely we can bring each other up and heal this in a powerful way too.
So thank you. I want to ask, and I think it's one of those questions where I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but I'm asking it for the people listening. Like, well, what about, and I know you had an open relationship, but what about if they had an affair? What about if they lied? What if they betrayed? What about if they cheated? All of these different things. Can you heal those things? Can you make the relationship better than ever? And what's different about your way of apologizing? Because it's like, I get that, some people go, yeah, I'm sorry, I'll never do that again. You're right, I'm a piece of shit, or whatever it is. Versus, I think what you're talking about is very different.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of, those cheating, affairs, those kind of things, absolutely you can come back from those things. However, the apology, and this is really vital, and it's not in the words, it's in the energy, it's in the recognition. So I gotta really properly see it and understand it, instead of just coming like, well, I'm sorry because you're hurt, so I'm sorry. I'm saying sorry because you're hurt. No, that's not gonna cut it. That's not gonna cut it whatsoever. Like, you gotta actually go inside of yourself and see what really has happened inside of you. How has this played out, and what's your part in it? What's your learning from it? Because just like, often those actions, they don't just hurt your partner, they hurt yourself as well. You see? And so that is the apology that you need to come from, that place. If there's no recognition, the apology is empty.
And I'm popping this up just so that people, if they want to know more, there's several things you can do. One is, if you resonate with Natasha and Jachym, their website is right there, Your Exceptional Relationship, and you can work with them. If somehow my kick-ass way of looking at relationships resonates with you, you can get a hold of us. But find yourself a coach, find yourself a mirror that will reflect back what's going on for you, and what do you need to adjust. I was a consultant for the city of Albuquerque. I travel around the world. One of my clients was the city of Albuquerque, and this guy came in and he goes, I was working with the managers for the different departments, and he goes, I'm not the problem, it's my employees. I said, great, you can leave the workshop, send your employees in, because if this is the good news, bad news, people, sorry, but if you're not part of the problem, you can't be part of the solution. And so part of what I'm hearing in this forgiveness is, like, when I own my part, that I'm part of the problem, then I can actually do something about solving it. So How do you work with people? What did you like? Okay, so I keep interrupting your story, but I always will.
No problem at all. No problem at all. So at the moment, what we're offering is we're working with women mainly. So you're working with couples. We're looking at the segment of people who are in a relationship. They want to change something, but the partner's not ready yet. And that is the people that we are helping with, because there's a great deal that you can do in order to change a relationship, just when you start doing the same dance, Okay,
so wait. I don't want that to slide by, because a lot of people say it takes two people to change, and you're saying it doesn't. Now, my experience is it's for me, the way I work, it's easier with both people, but it's very possible with one person. So I want people to hear that. We're not just idly saying this. This is like the elephant in the room. One person can transform the relationship. And I use the exact same metaphor, Jachym. If you're dancing and one person changes the dance changes. Now,
Exactly. You go from tango and you start to dance the cha-cha-cha. The other person can't do the tango anymore.
Right. So how do you work with them? What do you do to help them? And I want to be careful when you're saying working with women. So it's this is not blaming women. It's probably actually more like showing how much power women really have in the relationship.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, if we were to work with men, like if I were to think about working with men, I would just prepare all the material for men. It's not because I'm blaming men. It's, it's just I'm just looking at this is the person I'm going to help with. This is what you can actually do. This is the empowerment, and this is the power that you have in the relationship. And there's a great deal. Women have power in the relationship. They really do have a lot of influence on the relationship. And so what we have is we have a similar diagram to yours, but created for women, and we actually haven't put it up on the website yet. But part of that, one thing is which is a big part, we call it Unleash Your Inner Goddess, and it really is all about this inner healing, unguarding your heart, like coming back to that essence inside of you and being able to openly and vulnerably go into this relationship, because a lot of the issues are coming from coping mechanisms. Right. And coping mechanisms are often like the guards I put around my heart about, so I don't get hurt. But it's this coping mechanism that often hurts us instead of helping us.
And that I was listening. I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Alison Armstrong. I've had her on this show. She's an amazing relationship coach. And there's this thing about masculinity and femininity. And a lot of times what happens is there's a third place. And sometimes women say, I'm in my masculine, and actually they're in their guarded place. And men can be in their guarded place too. So I'm not putting it on one side. It's like, it's unshielding the heart, both for the masculine and the feminine. So it's not like you're in one or the other, but you can be masculine guarded or unguarded, feminine guarded or unguarded. So Natasha, I'm bouncing to you just a tiny bit, but how did it feel to open that, to do that opening heart that he just said?
You shift from, I don't matter, how I feel doesn't matter, it's all right, I'll put up with this. You go from this place where it's literally like you're nobody. There's no spokesperson for you. There's no one in here that Jachym could reach or even work with. You go from that empty place to a place where you actually take care of yourself. So...
Wow, hold on. I have strong masculine, I have strong feminine. When you said those things, like it just resonated throughout my body. And I've looked at how many relationships I've been in where, like, underneath it, the undercurrent was I felt like I didn't matter. So what precious work the two of you were doing in there. Keep going.
It's hard. We're talking about women and how, okay, mainly we work with just a woman, but how can your partner, your man, be there for you in the ways that you want if he can't reach you, right? If he can't figure you out and you're not showing up as you. So the more I stood up for myself, the more Jachym could be this really husband for me. And he didn't get a chance to before then. He didn't know what I needed from him. He didn't know how to love me. And he didn't get much feedback as to what was right and what was wrong in terms of how I felt within the experience. So suddenly he had a wife.
So go back though, because this is easy to be confused when you're saying stand up for what you want, because there's some people who stand up and get, and I'm politically incorrect here probably, but can be exceptionally bitchy, or if they're a guy, they can be doministic or whatever it is, like no demanding. And so how did you stand up without pushing him away, but actually having him want to lean in?
Yeah. So before we talked about how I was the nagger, I was the I was the one picking on him.
He couldn't do the carrot. He could. I remember that story, Jachym.
He couldn't do a lot of things then. Everything. I would say he failed the household. I don't know how to be like I would fix his shirt. Like he's about to walk out to a client. I'd be like, honey, like your collar. I'd be like, folding the little side of his shirt, making sure he was a well-dressed boy. I was doing all those things. So back to the question. I went from critical. He needs to be this way. He needs to act this way. He needs to do things my way. That feedback, it was not me showing up and asking him and sharing with him my desires and my needs within the relationship. That was me picking on him because I felt so much resentment and grudges against him. I had so many words I wanted to say. There were so many things I blamed him for that never voiced itself at that point, that it leaked. It just trickled out in my communication. And it was this power struggle. I didn't feel very powerful at all, but within the household, I could tell him how to cut a vegetable. I could tell him that he missed a spot when he was vacuuming. I could tell him all those things because I was like, yes, the household is mine. I can give him all this feedback. But no, that it's two different worlds. Voicing what you need from a vulnerable place and that kind of pushing, disempowering power struggle, actually.
Well, what you're saying there, I'm bouncing back to a little bit. I learned so much from Allison, but she talks about in the power struggle, what the feminine does is emasculate the man. So basically neuter the man.
Yep.
And then what the men do is they objectify the feminine. She's a bitch. She's this. It's like, and so if we feel uncomfortable, there's a power differential. Either we can lift ourselves up and become more powerful, or we try to bring our partner down. And I've been in those relationships, and I've done both. I mean, I've been the one being brought down, and I've brought my partner down. Yeah. And so I'm trying to say this so that people get that this is different than that. This is not disempowering him. It's actually empowering him so he knows how to make his beloved happy, which is, there's still a lot of men still would love to be their wives, their lovers' hero, to make them happy.
Exactly.
See, like that wasn't even a conscious thing. It's like, yes, there it is. So
that's exactly it.
Thank you.
For so many don't realize your man usually wants to see you happy, satisfied, and fulfilled.
Yeah, and people, I want you to see that Jachym, it wasn't like he thought this out. This was not like a reaction from his head or his intellect. It was like, yes, boom. It just touched that nerve, and instantly, and this is why now they have a remarkable relationship. So what is working with you entail? We got like 3 minutes left. What is working with you entail if people decide that this is something that they want to know more about?
Right. So as we said, we have a Cherished Wife program that women can reach out. It's one-to-one with us. We have the 3 pillars. One is the Unleash Your Inner Goddess. The other one is Harmonious Love, which we're actually looking at all the communication patterns and other patterns that have come in, which are really aligned to fear and insecurities. And we want to shift those away towards love and empowerment, right? So that you create a space where your man wants to come into, right? A lot of the dynamic where like he starts abandoning her or something like that. Part of it can be where he's start to associate the relationship to be very uncomfortable. He goes to his buddies and the work as an escape, right? And so taking care of that shifts that dynamic. It prepares a space. It creates the right context. And the last part is, which we call inside your man's brain, which is actually tapping into this, what you just said before, that he wants to be your hero, is to start to understand, what does your man actually want? because if you can tap into that, he's more than happy to fill your cup too, right? When he's coming from a full place, when he knows that he's loved, when he can be, sometimes your hero, and he can see that you're happy because you have unleashed your inner goddess, you've taken care of all those things that are happening within you, and you're coming from this happy place. Mm-hmm. The dynamic is now properly set up for success, right? And within that unguarding is also, when you come unguarded, the likelihood that he starts to unguard himself is very high, because you start melting those guards away.
Yeah, because when I'm teaching, I talk about your man can either protect himself from you or protect you. If he needs to defend himself, he can't defend you.
100%.
So that's, yeah. And
that's spot on.
How long give us a story, of sort of a breakthrough story. They came, they were here, you did this, where did they end up? So that people have an idea here.
Right.
And by the way, just so that people know, if they want to get this, totally as a side note, but if they want to get a copy of my book, they can go get a free copy of the book at the link below. So go ahead, tell us a little bit about a journey that somebody took with you guys.
Right. So I was actually working with this woman. She came to me. Originally, this is actually funny. Originally, she came to me because of a business problem. But as we start working, we realized there's also relationship problems. And one thing that she had is exactly that kind of guarding and then kind of wanting to quit the relationship. It got like she would just hold it in, and she would like just bust basically and be like wanting to quit the relationship. And she was going through those kind of iterations within different relationships that she was having, because it was the pattern, right? And so as we were working together, we started to really like go into those hurt places, those tender spots, right? Because look, those reactions, as you've said before, like when someone's fearful and they don't express it, it comes out as anger. Right. So her inability to kind of be with herself and be with that hurtness and be with that insecurity manifested then into like just break out. Right. And so that once we started looking at those things and she was able to drop more and more, it was amazing. Like when she came to me, she had like almost those spikes, energetic spikes on her. Because she was afraid. So that was her way of coping. And that just melted away. I could literally just see how that melted away. And what came out is the shining of her heart and the beauty that came with it. So she's now, in a new relationship where she actually is open, is receiving, is able to be with that person in a completely different way. It's like night and day.
Yeah. Carolyn Mays, who's a healer and energetic healer, said this quote, and I use it all the time about wounds. We either get bitter or we get better. And when we get bitter, we get smaller and smaller. And what you're saying, Jachym, is like the spikes come out and we're not a lot of fun to be around. And I went over the handlebars of my mountain bike probably 4 years ago or something, broke my hand. And if anybody touched it, my reaction was disproportionate to the touch because it hadn't healed yet, and a lot of times what happens is if we don't heal our hearts, then we are like hugging a porcupine. So do you have specific heart healing exercises?
Yeah. Right. So one of the very important thing, which is actually, it's the entryway, and anyone listening to this can do that right away, is to actually spend some time with yourself. Like put your phone away, put your books away, and just be with yourself. Just be with yourself a bit in stillness. And what happens is stuff starts to surface, right? When you start to be with yourself, you can notice, oh yeah, now I'm feeling guilty about something that I did in the past, or this memory is surfacing. Like there's stuff that comes up, and it comes up because he wants to resolve, he wants to leave. He wants to be looked at.
That's
so
an interesting way of looking at that. Thank you.
Right. So that is the entryway. And once it can surface, that is when the love and compassion is really important. Right. Rather than trying, oh no, I don't want to go there. Oh no, not this memory again. Hold it and allow yourself to open yourself in a gentle way to that. Because it's energy that wants to process in your system that keeps circulating or stuck. And so open yourself and bringing that love, shining the love and compassion on it. And we train that as well separately, because some people may have a bit more difficulty. And you start small. So start with a small thing, and then you can, work your way up to bigger issues, so that when you come to the bigger issue, your muscle is trained. You have the compassion to actually hold that appropriately without pushing it away, without having to resolve it, but letting it be there so that it can untangle itself.
So it's a bit like the relationship gym. You're building your muscles. You're going and doing your healing push-ups and chin-ups. And so thank you both so much. And I want to hear from Natasha if there's any clothing thing you want to say. But people, if you want to get a hold of them, I had their thing up there. You can get a hold of them there. They're working focused a lot on the feminine side. If you're wanting to work if you're a couple and you're wanting to work, you can, let's see, I cannot get my technology working right. This should be, let's see there we go. No. All right, it's not going to work. Argue Less, Love More.net/free book if you want to get a copy of my book. If you're a couple and you want to do a breakthrough session, get a hold of me. So Natasha, wrap it up. How has this journey been? Tell me like your closing thing here.
Yeah. I'd say you can get out of the woods. If you're like, I don't like where this is headed, you can get back on track. Like that path, it might have been just 2, 3 meters, 5 meters right next to you the whole time on that journey, but you didn't realize it was there and you could get back to it. And sometimes, like you said, Paul, that flashlight from someone else kind of, hey, over here, you see, that helps. That helps. So
yeah, one of my mentors and a guy that was my early trainer is a guy named Tony Robbins. And one of the things Tony said is you can turn decades into days if you get the right mentors. And so if Jachym and Natasha resonate with you, get a hold of them. They're currently off bouncing around the world in Malaysia, but you can reach them on their website and on Facebook. Thank you both so much for sharing your journey with us, and hopefully people got something from it. And I would love all the people, just make a comment. What did you get from tonight? And if you think that somebody else can get something from what was shared tonight, share this video with them. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
All right.
Amazing.
Ciao, everybody.